Welcome to Spaghetti on the Wall. I'm Eileen Dowse, Chair Emeritus and Director of Assessments for INIFAC. And today, I'm so excited, I'm joined by Neil Pretty. And Neil is a certified coach. He's a psychological safety certified practitioner, got to get all this right, and he's CEO and co-founder of Aristotle Performance based in Canada. For the next several minutes, we're going to talk about the misconceptions around psychological safety. Throw in some fun and humor. So, Neil, I literally have rolled up my sleeve because I'm going to be the disturber on this call because everybody talks about psychological safety all the time. It's like the Mythbuster channel. Let's bust some myths about psychological safety. So, welcome.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for having me.
Let's begin by what is psychological safety if people aren't aware of it. How would you describe psychological safety?
So there's sort of there are the dictionary definitions, the belief that you can speak up, share ideas, questions, concerns, and mistakes without feeling like you will suffer interpersonal consequences or some sort of professional risk. So there's that sort of dictionary style definition. And then one that I like that I wrote about in my book that'll be published in the coming months, and that my business partner sort of came up with is it's your ability to get as close to real time as reality as possible.
Can you say that again?
Your ability to get close to as close to real time reality as possible.
Okay.
What that means is, what that's ultimately saying is that no one person has the ability to hold all perspectives within themselves. So when you're working with others, that those lines of interdependence, the more you need to hear from people, the more important it is that you have their perspective too.
Yeah.
So the fundamental question of psychological safety, which is in Jeff Wetzler's book, Ask, and love the way he frames this, is what are people least likely to tell you that you most need to know?
Ooh, lovely.
And that helps round out that real-time reality so that you have a sense of it. And the gift of psychological safety is that you can gain that. And the problem with psychological safety, in particular for leaders, is that people don't necessarily want to give it to you because it might be better in their mind to keep it to themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's promote that book that you've written because I think it's really important, and it's Leading Beyond Fear. And the current thing here now, the current thinking is it'll be out February 2026, and with any luck, it'll be out sooner. So we'll be waiting for that. That's great. Yeah. Okay. So does it mean like I can feel safe to say what I want in a group? Because let's face it, in the corporate world, there's the political component. So I can't always say whatever I want, right?
Yeah, so this is where people mess up around psychological safety. And I think that it's easier to reframe it than to try to rebrand it. And the reality is that what you're doing is self-editing. And if you don't do that, you're really hard to work with. Question is, are you self-editing to a degree that you're no longer sharing what's true? Or are you self-editing so that others understand you, so that you're respectful, so that it makes the most sense? Those are fundamentally different. One is organized around sharing truth in a way that's constructive, and the other one is the not sharing your version of the truth or what's real is a way of self-protection. It's called impression management. And it's, I like to talk about when I do trainings for facilitators, when I do trainings for leaders, I like to talk about impression management because you can see it.
Cannot or can?
You can, whereas psychological safety, you can't see. It's an environmental condition.
Mm.
People are reading body language, they're reading tone, they're hearing stories of Jane over in accounting got fired because she said this. That story might not even be true. But as humans, we're wired to perceive threat and then respond to it, whether it's there or not, in a form of self-protection.
Mm.
So the result is we'll hold truth that might be risky to share within ourselves, and we'll hold it tight rather than sharing it in a form of self-protection.
Mm.
And that's where the real-time reality, the truth and perspective, that's where the rubber meets the road when we're talking about those kinds of elements.
Yeah.
And that's why I like to talk about impression management, because leaders can see it, they can do something about it, and then go, oh, if I speak in this way, people are more likely to
Yeah.
self-edit and not give me the information I need to make the best decisions possible.
There we go. I often say it's okay if your brain stops working. Do you mind turning down the volume? You know?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You want people thinking about, and this is where a lot of what our leadership development comes from, is you want people sharing their wisdom, not their tasks. Like,
Yeah. Ooh, I like it.
go do your tasks. I want your wisdom. I want your feedback. That requires a different level of cognitive capacity
Mm-hmm.
than executing tasks.
Yeah.
And if you want to be surrounded by people that are executing tasks, you're going to have a mediocre team at best. You'll never get beyond mediocre.
Absolutely. And it is that dance.
Totally.
Before we started recording, you and I were talking, and I had mentioned that whenever I do any kind of training and start incorporating this psychological safety, you can see the eyes rolling back in their head going, because it does come back down to nice topic, great ideas, and in reality, does it really work? And so let's bust some myths here. And one is, with psychological safety, everybody has to be nice.
Well, there's a big difference between nice and kind. My daughter asked me this when she was about 7. She said, Dad, what's the difference between nice and kind? And I said, well, nice makes you feel good, and kind is about making someone else feel good.
There you go.
Nice is selfish. Nice is self-protecting.
Mm-hmm.
Kindness is much more honest. But you say it and still do it in a respectful manner. And I think that's where people break down. And I think one of the things you said earlier is like people's eyes roll in the back of their head. And they should. The psychological safety training that we've seen around the world
Mm-hmm.
now as an organization, as Aristotle Performance, and we're based in Canada and the US, and we work internationally with large organizations all over the world.
Right.
Our main work now is cleanup. It's
Interesting.
people who have no clue what they're talking about psychological safety. They create the conditions for leaders to feel like it's just another thing for them to do that won't help them.
Yeah. Well, and it gets
And
in the way, right? Like now I
oh,
have to do psychological safety. What the hell? It's like
yeah,
I have an idiot person.
yeah,
And I realize that's a loaded point because their mindset might not be open to what the person is saying.
yeah,
This psychological safety seems like a box to check that I have to be nice
yeah,
or I have to provide this nice environment so
yeah.
that no one's feelings get hurt.
Well, and that's the thing is that too often it's framed in conflict to outcomes instead of in conjunction with.
Mm.
And so I'll give you an example. So one organization that we work with, consistently the finance team sends upward to the executive reports that are north of 100 pages long.
Oy.
Okay. The executive has sent down instructions to do not send these 100-page reports. But what's consistently rewarded are the people who send up the 100-page reports. They don't reward the people that send up the 5-page reports that make it all make sense in a timely and succinct manner. That's the hard work. Sending 100 pages, that's easy actually, because you just take everything and extend it. Here's everything, and then can't question me ever.
Right.
It's much harder to curate it down to 5 pages, but they don't reward that.
Right.
So the result is you get people who are afraid because there's a misalignment between what's rewarded, what's seen as valuable, what your colleague is doing versus what you're doing. And the result is people don't feel psychologically safe. They don't feel like they can question anything because now they're confused. So they're going to do the safest thing.
Well, and protect themselves, right? Because that's the
Yeah.
um, psychological safety is certainly creating an environment, but I also have to create my own environment because I want to feel safe.
Yeah.
Now, that kind of leads to the next bust here about, well, if we have such a lovely psychologically safe group, everyone will accept me and I'm not going to get laid off.
Yeah, that's a common misconception for sure. I mean, what a lot of people don't realize is that layoffs are business, not personal. I mean, there's a reduction in force. I mean, we're working with an organization right now that's doing a reduction in force that if you look at the business makes absolute sense. And the reality is most people don't want to be entrepreneurs, most people don't want to be self-employed, and most people who do try that on give it up after a couple of years because the number one thing you're going to do is sales. The number two thing that you're going to do is bookkeeping. Like and number three, you got to be a marketer. Number four, number like five, six, or seven, somewhere down the list is you get to do the work that you were impassioned to go bring to the
Exactly.
world. Most people want to be employees,
Yeah.
so you don't need to somehow endure feeling like a number.
Right.
But there's also a reality that there is a business that has to run, and sometimes businesses are what's required to run a business is a tough decision.
Mm-hmm.
Being psychologically safe has nothing to do with keeping that position.
Mm. So,
Contribution.
yeah, that's really interesting. It just occurred to me with psychological safety and you teaching leadership, we can teach leaders the importance of psychological safety and what it really means. And okay, so it's teaching them the skills and the mindset. What about the employees who either promote or want to promote psychological safety in their group
Hmm.
with their behaviors
Hmm.
or also doing trickle down? So I think, is there two different levels of psychological safety? I mean, this is so philosophical, right? Because everyone
Yeah.
can be a leader. You don't have to have a team to be a leader, all that. But is there something
Which I
about
don't believe, by the way.
that everyone can be a leader? Okay, yeah, fair. That's fair. And we definitely need followers, so I'm totally tracking with you on that one.
But I think it's the participation trophy. If you're a leader and I've held a leadership position since I was 13 years old.
Mm,
Held some kind of leadership position every
mm-hmm,
day since I was 13 years old.
mm-hmm.
Not everybody's a leader. And thank goodness.
Oh, I 100% agree with you. And like I said, if you didn't have followers, you're not going to have leaders
That's
because
right.
leaders have followers. So 100% agree. If you have a leader that values the importance of psychological safety,
Yeah.
got it. Check. We're good with that. What about the people component of the business
Hmm.
where either I expect an environment of psychological safety or I'm actually buying into the culture that this is what we're going to do? How, is that even possible? Like what do you think?
So I just want to clarify the question. Are you asking that is there some responsibility for people in teams
Yeah.
to be participating and cultivating and
Yes, yes,
like
or as an employee of an
yeah.
organization. Yeah, thanks for the
Yeah,
clarification.
yeah, absolutely. So I think this is absolutely true. Leaders have the single largest influence over psychological safety,
Mm-hmm.
but team relationships are a huge component, and so is organizational context.
Yeah.
So what leaders can do the most is change the context. It's easier to change context than it is to change behavior or mindset. Don't worry about mindset. Don't worry about behavior. Change the context first and make sure that. So, an example of that is I was on a call recently where there was particular initiative that wasn't going well. It was failing. It was in the process of failing. And I simply said, is this even solving the right problem? And that's all it was.
Yeah.
I don't. And then we started getting different perspectives, and there were different perspectives. Yes, no, maybe, So I asked another question. Well, is there another way that we could solve this problem? Like, is there another way at all? And what you get to see is people who have stuck mindsets and people who are more creative, people are more open to alternatives, those kinds of things. So then my role as leader in that position became to curate the context. If we didn't have this solution at all, or if we weren't allowed to do this, how might we do this differently? And so I'm continuing to reframe the question. And the reason why is because those people that are stuck and saying this has to be the solution, there can't be other solutions, that what they're doing is creating an environment where, as a team member, they're making it very uncomfortable for everyone else to contribute anything that's out of alignment with them, because they're now the threat. They're a social threat. What are you going to do? Continue to fight against your team member who has a stuck mindset? So as a leader, my job is to cultivate the environment or curate the environment so that team members don't inadvertently break down psychological safety for others.
Right.
And I continue to maintain the channels for alternative thinking.
Right.
That team member has a responsibility to recognize that they are also in a position where they can break down the psychological safety of a group, and they are responsible for their behavior.
Yeah.
But as a leader, I can deflect, I can moderate, I can mediate, right? I can create the conditions for that transition from one person dominating and misdirecting the group to more collaborative environment. And that's ultimately what it looks like. And I think that answers your question of, like, team members do absolutely have a responsibility as participants.
Yes, and to bust another myth, I think some of those team members, and I've heard this from team members, we have a policy of psychological safety.
Yeah.
So I can say this, and I can feel safe to say this.
Yeah, so this is where a little reframe helps. Every policy requires policing. So you can only police negative behavior.
That's
So
deep. That may be another podcast. That one's deep.
Right? So, but if you actually really think about that, if you can only police negative behavior, what you're doing is you're only removing negative behavior. At best, you can remove some negative behavior, but you're not encouraging positive behavior.
Right.
So what I just described is like a leader reframing, changing the context, using inquiry, those kinds of things. You can never police your way to that. You have to give people skills, confidence, opportunity to train. There was a picture going around the internet, or social media not too long ago, of the military training versus corporate training, and it was like train, perform, train, perform, train, perform. Whereas in the corporate world, it's perform all the time with a little tiny bit of training.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
The laughable degree of training that people are given relative to the performance expectations that they have
Oof.
absolutely sets people up for failure. Organizations should expect their leaders to be doing a poor job most of the time because of the degree of training that they've been given.
Okay, so what a great way to frame or position my last question. And that is, okay, for anyone wanting to get better at psychological safety, anyone wanting to understand its totality and figure out the skills needed, the training needed, and sure, contact your organization, all of those kinds of things. But what suggestions do you have for anyone saying, all right, I really want to do a better job creating this psychologically safe environment and interacting in a way that helps people give me all that information that I may not typically be able to hear.
So, do you want me to give you like books or skills to go learn?
Uh, just skills, just give me your, if,
Yeah.
if
Okay.
I met you on the street and went, oh, you do psychological safety, I want some. What would you tell
Yeah.
me?
So, the first thing I would do is suggest that people get um, facilitation skills. Leaders need facilitation skills. I know you love that answer, but
I love that answer, and I didn't pay you for that answer.
I'm not just saying it because it's you. And I say that, and it's significantly more important than coaching skills, I believe. In part because the coaching skills that you need most as a leader are embedded into facilitation skills.
Yeah.
So facilitation skills are paramount. Um, Self-awareness. So at very least, leaders having the capacity to do things like a habit audit. You are what you repeatedly do. Do you show up to meetings with no agenda? Do you show up to meetings and get right into it and to give nobody a chance to speak? Do you stop and say, does anybody have questions before we move on? Nobody's going to say they have a question for that because they're going to be disrupting the flow. They're going to be,
Yeah.
the stick in the mud. And no, you don't do that. So you need to change the way, you need to have a degree of self-awareness that allows you to audit your own behavior. So self-awareness, anything that develops that, actually,
or at
ironically.
least or at least have be open to what
Yep.
family members say, because they're
Yep.
always going to give it to you straight, right? And
Well,
listen to them with the context of where they're coming from.
yeah, and I think the goal of self-awareness is ultimately is to increase your ability to be wrong without making yourself a bad person.
Right.
That's where growth is. So I think self-development in that sense is very good because you need confidence as a leader. You need the confidence to be wrong without being a jerk about it or
Yeah.
without beating yourself up about it, you
Yeah.
know. So I think that's really so facilitation, self-awareness, and discernment.
Oof.
I think is
Beautiful.
really, really critical. I think it's a very underdeveloped skill for people. And that allows you to do things like create empty space. If you don't have empty space in your calendar, you're not a very good leader, and you're definitely not allowing people in your team to have empty space
Yeah.
that gives them a chance to think.
Yeah.
And you want people have exceptional minds around you and your goal as a leader is to tap into it. So I think Nancy Klein puts this really well, and her work is very, very good. Very good. I think she's one of the most underrated thought leaders, is Nancy Klein. Her book, Time to Think, is exceptional. And her thesis is effectively the quality of people's behavior depends on the quality of their thinking, and the quality of thinking depends on the quality of the environment in which they are thinking. So this is why leaders are curators. Your job is to curate and cultivate the environment first, behavior and mindset flow after. And through that pathway, you have it. So I think whatever gives you the skills to curate your environment and be able to see that, self-awareness, some discernment, right? Some facilitation skills that help you zoom out. I think those are the core ones that people need most.
And on that note, you've given us a lot to think about, and that's it. Think about it. Think
Think about
about your role in relation to creating these safe environments. Neil, I have always told you it is such a delight to talk with you. It just gets your brain cooking. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here. It's a pleasure to whenever I see your email pop up in mine, and it's always a pleasure. So lovely to see you.